Hello, my loves. Today we're going to look at some more Reddit stories, and if you've enjoyed a Reddit story, why don't you consider hitting the subscribe button? Maybe that's the notification bell too, and let's start with today's story. Story, entitled Mother Scolds Me for Pushing Her Daughter Away. This story happened to me when I was about 10 years old. My family and I were at an amusement park, which we always visit for a day every year. We had a lot of fun with all the different attractions. The park also had smaller attractions for children that used park coins. I was always a very patient person and always avoided conflicts because I am also very sensitive. As a child, politeness and respect were always the most important thing to me, whether child or adult. I always got on better with older people than children my age. In any case, there was a pirate attraction with 2 ships where several children could shoot cannons loaded with foam balls at each other. It was in a closed room and the parents could watch from outside through a grate. These cannons, however, required special coins to work. I had always been a pirate fan and was keen to try it out. We were never a rich family, and so I was taught how important saving is. These coins only cost €1 or so, but I didn't want to waste money. So I only got 3 coins and went into this attraction. I put a coin in the cannon and started playing with other children. Me alone against 4 other children. They bombarded me with the other cannons and I defended myself as best I could, which wasn't really a problem. But one of the children was a little girl aged 6 to 8 who made it fun to manipulate me and pushed me and the cannon away so that I couldn't aim and couldn't really play. I asked several times not to push me, but the girl just didn't listen to me. Since she knew that the cannon had a timer, I felt harassed because I was alone against 4 children. The timer was almost at the end and it was also my second coin. The girl continued to pull and push me, after several requests. I didn't want to use any more coins and wanted to take advantage of the time, so I grabbed the girl by the arm and looked her straight in the face and told her to stop. She burst into tears and ran out of the room. I was able to use the time again and play again. After a few minutes, a woman shouted at me. At first I didn't notice her because I was too deep in my defense. When I realized that she was shouting at me, I politely asked what the problem was. The woman replied, "You hit and insulted my daughter." I was taken aback and said calmly that I didn't hit her and tried to explain my point of view to her. She didn't let me get a word in edgewise and shouted at me while the girl on her leg grinned maliciously. She said I should apologize immediately and leave her daughter alone and let her do what she wanted. She apparently thought I was a violent child. During the discussion, a sound was heard which signaled that the timer of the cannon had run out. Emotionally charged and feeling attacked from all sides, I left the room and in disappointment how people cannot respect each other. I then found my family and told them what had happened to me because I was already crying because I was being insulted for something I didn't do. Afterwards I went to another attraction with my sister to distract myself for a moment. My father, a person with little patience, saw the mother and confronted her. I didn't notice and came back and saw my father and the daughter's mother having a heated argument. My mother didn't want to attract attention and asked my father to be quieter. The mother saw me as a liar and a bully and insulted me. A little later the father came and we explained the situation. He was a very reasonable gentleman and apparently knew immediately who the liar was and scolded his wife and daughter. He apologized and took mother and daughter to the exit of the amusement park. My mother was pretty embarrassed about this incident because we got so much attention and was angry with my father for reacting like that. I apologized for the situation getting out of hand. We tried to enjoy the day and I tried to lighten the mood, but it was in vain. Everyone in the family was pissed off for the day and we left the park to go home. I thought it was a shame that we lost our mood and fun just because of an argument. But the next year we went back and had a great time. I tried not to mention this story again until a few years later. But I will not forget this experience. Story, I'm an adult. I don't have to put up with this shit. My 26-year-old parents were teen parents and broke up when I was a few months old. They had a nasty custody battle and my childhood was high conflict because of their behavior. My mom died when I was 23. As I said before, things were very high conflict in my childhood and my stepmom at many times was the heart of that conflict. My stepmom was a huge source of conflict because of how evil she was growing up. I lived with my dad primarily growing up, so she was always around. My dad and I had a falling out but made up when I was 23, a few months after my mom died in a car accident. I forgave him for a lot of neglectful behavior and how he let his wife treat me growing up. This made my paternal grandma very happy. Fast forward to this last year, during Christmas time. I actually hung out with my stepmom and went shopping for presents for everyone. We had a great time. We went to lunch and things turned sour. She asked me, "Do you know why your dad and I never built a house? Did he ever tell you?" I said no. She then goes, "Well, we were forced to sell the piece of land and just buy a house instead. We weren't going to be able to afford it because of all your court fees." She's referring to the custody case that started when I was 5 years old. This statement really took me aback. I didn't say much. Later that evening I called my paternal grandma and asked her, why didn't my dad build a house? My grandma told me it was because my stepmom wanted too extravagant of a house, and they wouldn't be able to afford it. I told her what my stepmom had said about the court fees. My grandma was furious because she said that she had given my dad a large portion of the money for the legal fees. I decided to just let the situation go and not mention it to my dad, because I knew my grandma was at the end stages of liver failure and didn't have much time left with us. She was really happy my dad and I were getting along. My grandma passed away this April. Well, now it is July and my dad's cousin has now told me all of the BS my stepmom says about me and how she brags about how she treated me growing up. She had a separate fridge just for me because she didn't want me contaminating her son's food. That was one of the things she bragged about among tons of other things. According to this cousin, my dad wasn't there when these things were said, but he was made aware and didn't do much. Well, I have just fucking had it. I've forgiven him for all the shit he's done. I've sat on the whole "we didn't build a house because of your court fees" BS, and now this? I am 26 years old with my own kids and I don't need to put up with this shit anymore. I have put up with too much hurt from my dad and I don't feel as if I need to continue letting this kind of treatment in my life anymore, especially since my grandma is gone now. It is just very difficult because my mom is dead. She's gone. He's all I have left, even if he's not much. I am just so sick and tired of the hurt and disrespect. If I am being honest, he does not bring much value to my life. My kids somewhat know them, but aren't super attached, like a traditional grandparent-grandchild relationship. How do I approach a serious talk with him? Do I cut contact? If I do, how do I do it? Please give me ideas of full sentences to say. I am lost how to approach this from a place of logic and not emotions. Story, entitled "Parent Tries to Drag Me Out of the Park." So this happened a few days ago, and I thought that some of you here might enjoy it. Some important background information is that even though I'm 16, I look like a 12-year-old girl. It's like I stopped aging after middle school, so encounters like this one aren't uncommon, but this is the worst one so far. So Thursday, I went to the park alone just to sit at a beach, enjoy nature, read a book, scroll on my phone, etc. So there I was when I noticed this lady next to the playground watching me. She kept looking at me, and after 10 minutes she started to walk towards me. I let out a sigh and prepared myself because I already had an idea of where this was going. The lady comes up to me and says, "Excuse me young lady, but where are your parents? Are they here?" Me, "No, they're not here, they're EP. Don't you think it's dangerous for a girl your age to be alone?" Me, "No, not really." The EP now sounding a little annoyed, "A girl like you shouldn't be left unattended. Where are your parents? I want to talk to them." Me, "Ma'am, I appreciate your concern, but I'm 16 and I am very capable of taking care of myself." I must guess I picked the wrong chat option because after I said that she got super mad. EP, "Don't lie to me, young lady." Me, "I'm not lying. EP, I'm not stupid. I know what a 16-year-old looks like. Me, look, here's my driver's license. I pull out my wallet and show her my driver's license. She glances at it and scoffs. EP, please, I know a fake license when I see one. My 10-year-old could do a better job making one. Me, what? No, it's not fake. Can you just leave me alone? AP, if it's not fake, then you'll have no problem showing it to those officers over there. She points to a police car that's parked on the side of the road. And before I can say anything, she reaches down and grabs my wrist, really hard too, pulls me off the bench, and starts pulling me to the cop car. Me, let me go, you're hurting me. As we got close to the car, an officer came out and came up to us. Officer, is there a problem, ma'am? EP, yes there is. The EP pulled me in front of her. Tell the man what you did. Me, Jack Shastras T, that's what I did. Now let go of me. Officer, ma'am, is this your daughter? Me, no, she's not my mom, she's just some random lady. Officer, ma'am, please let go of the child. The woman then let go of my wrist. EP, she's lying about her age and she has a fake driver's license. Officer, do you have a fake ID, Miss? Me, no. Officer, may I see it? Me, yes. I pull out my driver's license and hand it to him. Officer, how old are you? Me, 16. The officer looked me up and down before checking my driver's license. Officer, ma'am, this is a valid driver's license. EP, what? No, it can't be. She doesn't look 16, she's too young. Officer, the ID is valid and it says she's 16, and it's not a crime to look young. However, it is a crime to drag someone across the street. Miss, do you want to press charges for assault? EP, wait, what? Me, no, I just want to go back to my day. Officer, very well. EP, but wait. She, officer, ma'am, if I were you, I'd stop talking. I'd also apologize to this young lady and thank her because she just saved you from a lot of trouble. The EP gave a half-hearted apology and ran off. The officer then made sure I was all right, apologized for her, and handed back my driver's license. After that, I grabbed my stuff and went back home. So that was my most recent experience with a crazy person. Story, I can't forgive my dad. My sister and I went to the cinemas with our friend and we bought snacks to share. I bought candy and chocolate biscuits. When we got home, she hogged the chips she bought and also took the chocolate biscuits that I bought. I was so tired that I just went to sleep and told her not to finish the biscuits. The next day, I grabbed the chocolate from her and put it on my bed because it was mine. She snatched it back from me while I was gone, so I came and took it back. She chased me out and made a whole fuss, screaming and everything. My dad came and asked who the chocolate was for, and I said it was mine and that I bought it. She kept going, so my dad grabbed me, and I was yelling. He held me down and told her to grab it. I fought out and was about to give her some when she said something to upset me. I was like, F you, I ain't giving you any. Then she hit me, and we started fighting. I got extremely mad because my dad was holding me while she was hitting me. I was getting hit by both her and him. Then she went to get a knife, and I ran and jumped on her. My dad separated us and was so mad. He grabbed me and I was sitting on the couch when he just started hitting me so hard, punching and kicking me, yelling and going absolutely mental. He wasn't himself. He usually hits, but never this bad. He was acting like I was a grown man his size. He left the house and came back, then ran at me trying to hit me again. I begged him to leave, and he just smashed up my chocolate. I was in so much pain and went outside, having a panic attack. I called my mom and told her everything. She said I should have given the chocolate and that he was obviously wrong. She told me to go to her room and lock myself in. A couple of hours passed and he came back, buying me new chocolate as an apology, but I chucked it. He also sent me $20, but I sent it back. A week went by, and I ignored him. He was mad at me and tried to make me feel guilty. Today, he apologized because my mom forced him to, and he is giving me $150. I told him I forgave him, and he said sorry, hugged me and all. But I just can't feel myself forgiving him. The way he hit me, like I wasn't his daughter. It was like he was fighting me. My jaw hurts so bad I have to chew slowly, and the way he kicked me while I was crying and begging him to stop, he kept hitting me with so much force. It wasn't even my fault. He didn't hit my sister, he was being so nice to her. He gave her money but was shit-talking me out loud the whole week, putting all my siblings against me. He would cuss me out and say a whole bunch of rude things when I walked past, literally bullying me. I feel bad because I know he feels guilty, and I'm taking his money, but I just feel so angry. The fact that my family jokes about it as if it wasn't so traumatizing. I thought he was going to kill me because he has crazy anger issues and can't control himself. He takes meds for it and even said himself that he couldn't control himself. But it fills me with rage how he could do that to me and then be like, if you act up, that's going to happen to you next, to my siblings. I know he is my father and has done everything for me and sacrificed a lot for me and my siblings, but I just can't forgive him. By the way, I turned 16 and am a girl, and my sister is 17 turning 18, and my dad is big and super strong and taller than me, and he is fat and strong. Story: I don't want to accept my father anymore. Recently I have a fallout with my dad that led to me staying by my grandparents. In short, he became drunk and started to confront me when I said that I don't want to listen to his music. He listened it so loud that I could hear it clearly in my room, which is 2 rooms further away from where he is listening, and yes, my door is closed. In general, it is also thanks to his music that I don't like Vietnamese and refuse to learn it. Both of my parents are Vietnamese. In the past, he has his damn bass near the wall to our neighbor. Therefore, whenever he started to listen to his music, our neighbor started to banging on our door. Sadly, I am the only one that could hear it as my sister is too nearby the music and my mother doesn't hear that well, so I am mostly the one who opened it and receive our angry neighbor. My mother and my sister don't like the music as well. I don't particularly blame my neighbor as I understand that he is rightfully frustrated over it, but the situation didn't improve when my father adamantly refused to confront him. I mostly had to pull him over, and it ended that he just screamed at our neighbor and slammed the door, and then it repeated until we could tell him to stop hearing his music. This occurred in the past many times. I am also the one who has to confront our neighbor most of the time, until my father accepted that we moved his places somewhere else, but that was more than enough to make me hate Vietnamese music to the point that my mood hit rock bottom when I hear it. I tried to let him listen to it a bit, but it only soured my mood more, and he never held on his promise to shut it after his proclaimed last song. One of the following will occur when he said that he will only listen to his last song. He will continue to listen and ignores his promise. He will restart the video in the hopes that we are too stupid to recognize it. He says he can't stop it as YouTube continue with autoplay. I know that it isn't nice to forbid him of doing STH. But if he can't learn to control himself, I have to do it. In his life, he only cared for himself and never questioned if his family is happy or not, and that only leads to me, my sister and my mother suffering under it. For example, we were on vacation in Vietnam and we were on an inflatable that was currently towed by a motorboat at high speed. As it was connected wrongly on the boat, the inflatable will tilt by every turn the boat makes. As we fall into the sea, we all have life vest on. It shouldn't have been a problem. There were also some wooden island near us. I fell on my chest and had trouble breathing as I float. My father was in panic as he wasn't a good swimmer and then pressed me down to rescue himself. I actually don't know what I should say to that. We both had life vest on, and how could you press your own son down to rescue yourself? This is one of the more severe story, but there are many others. He isn't better with his family like with my grandmother, his mother. There was a time where she was addicted to her sleep medication and she wanted to go to the ER even though she had nothing. It is way better now. My relatives didn't want to risk it and brought her there. Okay, to be more accurate, I brought her there as most of my relatives didn't live near her or are busy with anything else. They mostly called me and asked me if I could bring her there, and I am fine with it as I have time, and if it is an emergency I am more than willing to help. But one time when I was at home, my father joked about the fact that I will probably bring my grandmother to the ER while he doesn't have to do anything and doesn't need to care. Small reminder, this is still his mother. He also said that while I was in the same room. I started to question my kindness to other after this, but decided to stick to it at the end. When he is retired, he also expect me to take care of him, like paying him. Yeah, he can completely forget that the only thing I will pay is the money he has given me while raising me. Afterward, I will break contact with him. I know that probably most of the people here say that I don't have to pay him, but I see it in another way. As I don't accept him as my father, I see it in a way that I borrowed his money and just pays him back. After I got a job, I am currently studying engineering, to end our relationship. I will probably stay in contact with my relative, father sides, as I have a good relation with them, but I will not fold when they ask me to reconsider my decision about my father. My mother will probably also break contact with him as she only stays with him because of us, me and my sister, and when the time comes I will help her. My mother is probably the one who formed me as who I am today, and I am really thankful for her support and her teachings. Story, Mom saying I cannot yell at her. I promise this isn't what it sounds like. I just wanted to start off by saying I think I am a pretty good child, and my mom always tells me to. I am 18 and I help her by doing all the chores in the house. I understand she is a single mother carrying this family and working too. I go drive to get her groceries and food. I am going to a college soon and the tuition is completely paid, and she doesn't have to pay a cent out of her pocket. I really hope I have made her proud. I am always trying to be obedient, and when she gets mad I try to swallow it down and get over it. She asks me a lot of things that I sometimes don't agree with or don't want to do, like forcing me into certain clothes, and I do my very best to comply with it even if I don't want it. I do love her very much, and I love this family of three very much. Recently she has asked me to give her my university portal account login and password, to have full access to seeing my finances and refunds that get dispersed into my student account. She is also in a fit since I put the direct deposit from the school under my checking account instead of hers. I just thought I could be able to send the scholarship refund money to her. I hesitated to give this information to her because I wanted a little bit of privacy with my account. I wanted a little bit of independence with my future life and maybe managing my own finances in my own student account. I love my mom and I do admit I am still a very dependent child, but maybe having control over this one account would be nice. I wrote down my username and password, but I forgot an extra character that I use that covered all the site password requirements, like when they want a symbol or something. Anyways, long story short, she tried logging in and it didn't work, so I tried several other logins until it finally worked. And now she is blaming me, saying that I purposefully wrote down the wrong password because I didn't want her to see my finances. I wanted to keep the refund money to myself or something, not that I really had much left after paying for my housing, rent and stuff, and trying to manipulate her. I never yell at her, I always am obedient and highly respectful, even when I am mad, but every time she accuses me of lying it kind of sets off a trigger inside me. I did yell at her today and I cried and I got very emotional because this is just such a weird and absurd thing to accuse me of, that I don't want her to see my scholarship money or something, even though we went over the exact amount months ago, or that I want to hide things from her. Now she is telling me that I am not allowed to yell at her, that I must respect her, and I decided to talk back, saying that if she didn't want that then she should not unreasonably accuse me of those things, and accept that I make mistakes. Now she is saying she can accuse me all she wants, and I better not yell at her, or in the future I would be yelling at her when she gets old. She is also afraid that I will be overly independent like my friends, and she is afraid they have influenced me. She is afraid I will not be one with my family. These are all her words. I always try to push down my emotions, and show her I am an obedient and respectful kid. But now I feel she has pushed a lot of my own boundaries, but puts it on me by saying I pushed hers by yelling at her. I feel like she feels like she can push all the boundaries she wants on me, but I cannot do the same back when I feel like she is overstepping. So I guess, am I wrong for yelling and getting mad? I will do my best not to yell ever again, but I just feel like the dam kind of opened here and I hate being accused of dishonesty. Story, the 23rd anniversary of my first Karen. I originally posted this 3 years ago, on the 20th anniversary of my first Karen. But now my first Karen is old enough to drink, and I always love sharing this story. I hope you enjoy reading it. Today is the 23rd anniversary of my first encounter with, and victory against, a Karen. Today, July 4th, 2024, marks 248 years of independence for the United States. However, I remember it almost as much as the 23rd anniversary of my first encounter with, and victory against, a Karen in the workplace. Now, because it has been 20 years, some details will be spotty. My memory is quite good, but 2 decades is bound to make certain things fade. Picture it, the movie theater. July 4, 2001. Only 2 months before the world changed forever. I, 17 at the time of this event, now 40 have always been a major film buff, so to work in the middle of it was just the best scenario ever. Sure, sweeping popcorn and smuggled Taco Bell wrappers wasn't exactly heaven, but, they wouldn't pay you if it was 100% lollipops and rainbows. It was the busiest day I've had since I started working for the theater. Everything popular was playing. At one point 9 of the 18 auditoriums were completely sold out. I am already well known for my pleasant customer service demeanor, so I am enjoying the cushy assignment of tearing tickets at the podium and directing people to the right screen. Repetitive gig, but it kept me from endless runs up and down stadium stairs all night. Just smile, tear the ticket, and a chipper. This will be the first/second theater to the left. Enjoy the show. One of the duties across all positions in the theater was to be vigilant about keeping kids from getting into R-rated movies. Quite often kids would try to pull one over on us. The most common would be to buy tickets to another movie and then sneaking into the R-rated movie when nobody is looking. Whenever an especially popular R-rated movie was playing, we didn't play around. ID checks at the box office and the podium, along with an usher at the auditorium entrance to make sure the ticket matched the film. July 4th happened to be the opening day of one highly anticipated R-rated movie. It was a sequel to a comedy with a reputation of being quite risque throughout. Let's call it Terrifying Film Part 2. We had been pretty secure against young uns sneak attacks before, but today we had to be Fort Knox. Enter 2 boys, no older than 12. I almost wanted to confiscate the sodas to keep from stunting their growth. Both hand me tickets to, wait for it, Terrifying Film Part 2. Quite bold. I admire this approach. I ask the kids for ID. Of course, they don't have one. Sorry. No ID, no parent, no dice. They walk away and I think nothing of it. 10 minutes later, I hear the screech of what I would later know is the mating call of the Karen, demand us, accommodate us, known for their distinctive haircut, dilated pupils, and lack of reasoning. Karen, my kids are going into this movie. Me, ma'am, because this film is rated R, anyone under 17 have to have the K. I'm watching another movie and then when that's over I'm gonna sit with them. I'm just dumbfounded. That's not how this works. The parent has to accompany the kid through the whole film. Even though this was indeed my first rodeo, I knew pointing that out would be as productive as baptizing a feral cat. So I take a different approach. Me, if you can show me your ticket as well, I'll let you all sit together. And here we go. You know how they say you always remember your first? Yep. Now this part 1 remember like it was 5 minutes ago. K, get. Me. Your. Manager. I could feel the white-hot fury of 1,000 suns shooting from her eyes. I'm surprised the papers on my clipboard haven't burst into flames. I'm at the podium. I can't walk away. Usually the podium has a radio to page management in situations like this, but of course when I needed it the most, it had vanished. I'm unable to leave the podium, but I can't grab a manager either. I'm stuck. I try to explain, but this just makes her turn an even darker shade of crimson. Kay, this is freaking ridiculous. Karen stomps away. Well, as much as one can stomp in sandals. Quick breath of relief, apologies to a couple of lovely elderly ladies for having to witness that outburst, and then, Karen returns with manager. Manager tells me to let the kids through. Did Karen magically produce another ticket for Terrifying Film Part 2 to corroborate her story? Did he ask for my side of the story? Did he remember policy? Take a wild hypothesis. Hell no. That was the day I learned surgical spine removal is a prerequisite for customer service management. Karen gives me that I got my way, you little peon look. Now, I don't like being overridden on policy. I hate when management knowingly bends the rules and making me look like an idiot in the process. But of course I don't necessarily want to shout WTF to my manager at the same time. After all, he holds my newfound employment in his hands. This is where I know I was in the wrong. I knew it when I did it. I knew two wrongs don't make a right, but gosh darn it, I was not going to let her win. I lied. I tell the manager that she called me a king idiot. Hey, it sounded close enough to her freaking ridiculous remark that if there were still any witnesses nearby, it can seem like that is indeed what she said. Manager's eyes light up. Maybe they accidentally left a piece of spine during that surgery. Manager pulls Karen and the kids back. Asks Karen if she cussed at me. I thought I'd seen Karen at full meltdown mode before. Nope. Not even DEFCON 3. Karen goes off, alternating between incomprehensible sobs and hateful screams from the seventh circle of hell. That's the worst one, right? Kay, how dare you? How dare you, you little liar? He's lying. He was cussing at me. Me, ma'am, I don't talk like that to customers. Manager shuts me up. I admit, I should have kept my mouth shut and not fuel to the fire. However, I was hoping I could induce some sort of short circuit in Karen's head. I was so focused on checking Karen's hair for smoke that I did not notice her husband, in his dirty wife-beater, until he jumped into the conversation. He claimed to be a big shot at a restaurant chain, big eater, maybe, and that he had the power to get me fired? Get everyone fired? Make sure my appetizers are served lukewarm at his company for the rest of eternity? Whatever. Husband is laying into me, and defending myself. Karen is about to burst some blood vessels, hers or the manager's, unknown. The lobby is being treated to some live theater while waiting for their concessions. Manager finally sends me to the break room because I'm not staying quiet and husband is about to punch my face in. As I make my way to safety, I see Karen speed walk back to the box office, crying, accompanied by the manager. Karen and her brood get full refunds. I did get reprimanded for talking back to the customers, but I still declare my first encounter with a Karen to be a rare victory. Oh, and the kicker? Karen and husband had tickets to another movie, a PG-13 film that started at the same time as Terrifying Film Part 2, but ended a full hour after it. She wasn't going to sit with them during that movie at any point. And that was the time I lost my Karenginity and started a lifetime of dodging entitlement. In the 2 decades since, I've accumulated enough wild Karen stories to fill a series of books. If you like this story, I can gladly regale you with more. Thank you. Story, I, a transom 17, feel like my mom doesn't want me to get better. I, transom 17, feel like my mom doesn't want me to get better. I had a therapist and other forms of help for some months. I gotten comfortable with my therapist enough to open up about everything that has ever happened to me, including my dad's and mom's abuse towards me, them letting friends and family hurt me, our old housing situations, and overall anything that has or was happening. I was able to be told that yes, it's likely I have autism, that they'd give me ADHD meds just in case. I was also told I'm schizo and I have tics randomly, and yeah, I'm depressed to a severe level. I developed an eating disorder and I also have bad anxiety issues that helped calm a lot of me that I was afraid of. But my mom hated my therapist. That's because when my mom's ex Betty was living with us, she just recently ran away from my mom with her baby. My money would give me the baby while she went out with friends. Betty tried her best to make my mom stop, but she couldn't. Each argument ended with my mom laying hands on her and me getting in between them to help Betty. I told my therapist about this and she saw me babysitting. She was concerned because I was a high-risk person, so she was obligated to call DCF. My mom hated her, but I convinced her to not change me. She was the first person to believe me from the beginning and try to help me. Now a week or so ago, I'm bad with time, sorry, my therapist had to call DCF again. This time it was about my eating. When her now ex-GF moved, my mom was put in charge of all the shopping and everything else. My therapist told me that I didn't have to be a parent to my siblings BC I wasn't their parent, I didn't have to clean after them, so I stopped doing that. My mom hated that because she used to rely on me for everything and I just gave that up for my own mental health. So in retaliation she would take my siblings to the store without me, they'd go grocery shopping and never buy my safe foods. Safe foods are something I'm 100% going to eat. I have a habit of going days without eating, so we developed that plan. I might be fat, but I can't eat like I'm fat, lol. Then once I did want to eat, she's yell at me for eating their food. The fridge had either dinner stuff or snacks. If I touched a snack I'd get yelled at. They never bought stuff for me to eat and I felt like I was taking their food. So I stopped eating again. It went on for a month and some change, and then I told my therapist. I told her in tears how I haven't had an actual full meal in a couple of days. She saw that in my face, I was pale and tired, and she said my cheekbones were caving in. She said that she was sorry, but she had to call CPS again. I broke down because I knew if my mom knew she'd be mad at me and never let me get more help. I was right, OFC, she took my therapist away, then my therapy manager, she made each therapy manager session all about her. I wasn't allowed to get a new therapist till SHE felt comfortable with them. She took my meds away and said you don't need them, you need weed, it'll help everything. I don't understand why my shit always revolves around her. Like, am I crazy, or should my therapist and any other help I get be at my comfort, not hers? Why is it when I'm getting better and able to function normally she fucks it up? Like she's acting as if I am selfish for wanting a therapist who actively helped me, who sat there and calmed me down and made plans with me. She hasn't even attended family therapy BC, she's busy. Am I wrong for thinking she doesn't want me better or something? Story, you will decorate your apartment how I want it to be. My mother is a bit narcissistic. At first, she seemed completely normal. Until you know or live with her. That's why she can't seem to keep in touch with any of her friends or even her children. I haven't been in contact since 2023. After getting fed up with her self-righteousness and narcissism, I moved away when I was 19 to 20 years old, which was unusual because rent in the area had skyrocketed. I managed to get by with a roommate who had a high-paying job and also had his own job. She doesn't pay any of my living expenses. We do everything ourselves. Despite this, she has always tried to control every aspect of my life, and the fact that she continues to do so is why I choose to go no contact. I only realized it was an option through psychotherapy and a supportive group of friends several years later. Before that point, I listened to her and she could make me feel guilty about many things I didn't want to. When I moved, I tried to decorate my new apartment any way I saw fit. I have so many ideas. I immediately hung all the posters I had in my room in the hallway. The walls have a few cracks and I want to cover them up. We used red and blue pushpins. We still don't have a kitchen table, but we never eat at the table anyway. I wanted something really small so it wouldn't take up space, or something multifunctional. We finally found a pool table that had a sturdy cover on top so we could put a vinyl cloth over it to protect the table from getting dirty. My dad really liked that idea. My mother, not really. She hated the way I decorated my new apartment. She thought it looked childish with fairy lights on the ceiling. My dad thought it looked like a bachelor apartment and had no problem with that. Must love my dad. She kept commenting on how I needed to take down the posters and buy paintings I didn't like or need. She kept telling me I needed to draw something, which I did, and frame it to hang in the hallway. Every time I visit or come home to get more stuff. It's the same conversation every time about how ugly she thinks my apartment is. She would never do it that way, she needs to come in and fix it. No adult would want it that way. She wants me to redecorate my entire apartment, which will cost hundreds of dollars hiring a painter or buying things I don't need from Goodwill. I tried to gently tell her that I liked the look of my apartment and that I was an adult who could make my own choices. We haven't moved all my stuff into the apartment yet. It's horrible how she makes so many mean comments about how I have no taste. I need to tear everything down and start again. Her house looks so much better. Most of the time I ignored it. I was so used to her hating everything about what I did. Then she stopped making those comments and started taking me to garage sales in hopes of finding something I needed. Of course, it was a plot of her own. She found a kitchen table and chairs that she loved. I don't want them. I'm looking for a billiard table. She bought them all, and when Dad said she wouldn't throw away his kitchen table, she gave them to me. I was raised to always accept the gifts she gave me, otherwise she would get mad. She would make it her mission to make me feel guilty and the worst person in the world if I showed any dislike for her gifts. There were times when she returned some of my Christmas gifts because I didn't have the right reaction to them. If I hadn't flashed a big smile and enthusiastically thanked her for what she gave, the gift would have disappeared from my pile and I would never have seen it again. There were times when she told my siblings to steal it from me and that I would never have the chance to wear that shirt and play with the toys. Just because I didn't show gratitude forever or show enough gratitude for her to have any self-respect. She thought she had the right to control my reaction when she gave me a gift. Other times, she thinks she's entitled to other people's gifts and steals gifts from me, my dad, or my siblings because she thinks she looks better wearing them or just plain simply want them. I was never allowed to own a game console because she believed I would spend less time with her. In fact, I've found other ways to spend time with her that aren't technology-based. She just didn't want to give me something I could use to ignore her. I ended up saving every bit of my birthday money to buy myself a laptop when I was 16 years old. There was no help from my mother because she often told people at my birthday party not to give money. Story, my father literally told me to KMS and saw nothing wrong with it. It happened to me 2 weeks ago. I was at my father's apartment and we were drinking tea together. At that time, I had just passed the exam and was under a lot of pressure. I had insomnia, anxiety, panic attacks, and my bipolar disorder was worse than ever. I am recovering and trying to take small steps out of this terrible mental state. So, when the subject of the exam naturally came up, I told him all about it but didn't go into much detail. When he asked why I couldn't forget and move on, I tried to explain that it was complicated and related to PTSD. I had traumatic experiences related to exams from the previous university I dropped out, and how psychology works. He still didn't understand and said I was just overreacting and making excuses out of laziness. I again tried to explain in detail what was really happening to me by giving examples from the past, including suicidal thoughts. His answer was, then commit suicide if you can't live with your mental problems in society, and then he just talked about how in his time there were no mental problems. Mental problems and everyone is happy, but modern children are very weak. Back then, I just tried to brush it off and change the subject, and an hour later left on relatively good terms. However, when I returned home, I realized how bad the whole situation was and it seriously affected me for the next 3 days. I actually thought about suicide and had to work really hard to resist the thought and find reasons not to do it even though I knew I would be much happier once I was dead. A few days later, I got over the situation and decided not to talk to my biological father anymore unless he apologized. I went to that apartment to meet my stepmother and show her some great new English books I had ordered so she could use for her classes. She is an English teacher and I live in a non-English speaking country. I thought my biological father wasn't home so I felt comfortable coming, but unfortunately, he was there. I decided not to stay silent and directly explained the situation. He was really surprised to hear me upset about it and replied that he was just speaking his mind and that I was too soft and easily offended. That made me really angry, but I tried to stay calm and once again explained that such things should not be said to someone with a history of suicide. He was really surprised and asked, "Any history of suicide?" That was the last straw for me because he was the one who sent me to the mental hospital after my suicide attempt 3 years ago, and he knew about my recent suicide attempt last August because the incident involved the police and a neighbor alerted him. I got angry and said I was tired of pretending he was a good father, that I didn't want to hear his stupid comments about my mental health anymore, that I knew him didn't care about me, and that he was no better than my biological mother. She was religiously obsessed and I had cut off most contact with her. My stepmother also heard all of that, and although she did not directly object to my biological father, her husband, not making the situation worse, she did show her support to me and said that she actually agreed with some of what I said. My dad was completely taken aback and once again said that he was just speaking his mind publicly and he didn't see anything to apologize for. I replied that in that case I didn't see any way to continue talking to him, started ignoring him and left 15 minutes after I finished with my stepmother. I have not been in contact with my biological father since then and I am thinking of cutting off all contact with him. I know I can try to talk politely and try to get him to apologize, but what's the point if he clearly doesn't want to and can't understand me? I really think that if I asked him what my favorite color is, what my hobbies are, who my favorite singer is, he wouldn't be able to answer these questions because he mostly liked never caring about my life outside of school, work, and my mental health. It would be hard for me to not contact him because I would essentially have to admit to myself that I never had loving and caring parents in the first place, and that would be a very painful thing, although in terms of objectively, I knew it was true. Story, entitled Grandma Hits Me with a Baby Stroller During a Graduation Ceremony. First things first, I'm an autistic 20-year-old. I'm pretty sensitive to loud sounds and large groups, which is exactly what a commencement ceremony is, unfortunately. I was there for my sister, though, and I don't regret it. I do wish I had brought headphones or something, though. The guests at the ceremony were made to sit on plastic bleachers in a large gym with barely any legroom or space for moving, especially once the benches filled up. I am also very particular about personal space, probably because of said autism. The forfair even sat down next to me. I was starting to have a hard time with the environment, so I went quiet and tried to focus on playing games on my phone. I was there with my parents and grandma, and I was sitting with an open seat next to me. Fair walks over some seats to get to the spot next to me and calls her family on the phone to tell them where she was. I was already worried that more people were coming, but I had no negative vibes from her specifically. Her family showed up 5 to 10 minutes later, a group of like 6 people, including a really upset infant. I'm personally not a fan of children in general, but screaming ones take my anxiety and overstimulation to a whole new level. Thankfully for me and everyone around them, the baby quieted down pretty quickly and didn't cry for the rest of the ceremony. What a polite little baby. When the baby showed up, Fair unfolded a whole baby stroller and rolled it right next to her in the decking/foot area of the bleachers. The stroller's handle was a few inches from my face, and I obviously noticed it, but didn't confront her about it. I don't like making any scenes even if the outcome could be positive. She put the baby in the stroller and started rolling it back and forth in the free space between me and her, which means the stroller's handle was literally centimeters from my face every few seconds. I still said nothing and just focused on my phone. It played out for a while like this as I tried to block it out. I texted complaints to my friends and sent a selfie of me and the stroller handle right by my face. I was starting to calm down as she moved the baby to other family members, but when the baby came back to her, she missed putting him in the stroller and it came rolling and smacked my whole body and my face. Fair did apologize, but I silently pushed the stroller back as far as I could to her and made its fine hand motion, trying not to leave the whole ceremony in general. Despite this, she continued rocking the baby in the stroller, and it got even closer to me. Intervals of her pushing the stroller into my face and me inching the stroller back when the baby was elsewhere and she was distracted happened over the next hour. Right as the ceremony was ending, my own grandma on the other side of me noticed I was silent and basically crunching myself as far away from the stroller as I could. She confronted Fair and kept saying to her, "You're getting too close," while pushing the stroller back to her. Fair was not receptive to this advice and kept shaking her head no and arguing with my grandma. I tried to block it all out as I was between the two of them, covering my ears and looking down, so I don't remember too much verbatim. Eventually, they stopped and we left immediately because I was close to a meltdown. Fair and her family walked by us as we left, and she said absolutely nothing. Frankly, I'll be glad to never see her again. I do feel guilty for not asking her to stop myself and then having my grandma argue with her, but I was not in the headspace or had the mental capacity to engage in any conversation. Story: I feel defeated and stuck. I want my parents to move out. My parents have been irresponsible my whole life. I've been homeless and in many uncomfortable housing situations, including living with extended family, homeless shelters, cars, or squatted housing on and off throughout my childhood. During my senior year of high school, I lived in a motel. I turned 18 in late 2021 during the pandemic while my parents and two of my siblings lived in the motel. I was in my first semester of college and had to return to the motel due to financial struggle. During that time, my dad had told us that the weekly rent owed to the motel was paid through a rental assistance program. However, they would spend their money on gambling, weed, and alcohol and never buy food, causing us to lose a lot of weight. Two of us were in college, and they would take the relief money we received and spend it too. Then they would criticize us for not having jobs, even though my mom didn't have a job either and one of my siblings had to quit theirs because my parents would take their money while they were sleeping, and it got to a point where they couldn't afford transportation to the job. On top of that, I had no birth certificate or social security card because they lost it when I was like 5 and never replaced it, so I couldn't get a job until I got them. It took months, but my siblings and I figured out how to receive my documents and got jobs to save up to move away from our parents because their irresponsible ways were keeping us trapped in the motel with them. It was really hard to save and keep money from our parents. At first, my dad would tell me how he made more money than me and that my money from my near minimum wage job meant nothing, letting me know constantly that on a bad week, he made twice as much as me. Then he and my mom would ask for money. They would get mad when we asked them why or said no. It was hard with them taking our money, but after 5 months of working, we had enough money to start looking for a place. We decided not to rush since we also wanted money to save for a car. We told our parents we were looking for a place, and they said that they would also look for themselves. While still touring houses, we were given an eviction notice, and it turned out my dad had been lying about paying rent. We had no clue because he did say the program was over and would ask us for money to cover it. My siblings and I decided to just move into any place we could. We got accepted for a 3-bedroom house for a good price in today's economy, and we had our move-in day set just before the eviction date. Just before we moved in, my dad asked if he and my mom could move in with us for just a year and said that he would even pay half of the rent, and we could split the other half 3 ways. We didn't think he'd actually do that, but we agreed because we felt bad and didn't want them to be homeless, and we figured we could use their car some more. I ended up getting a new car the same week we moved, and then my parents' car needed some work. So we ended up splitting the rent 4 ways, me, 2 siblings, and Dad. Then he crashed his car and never got it fixed because he had no insurance. After that, it continued to get worse. My mom would take my car, lie about where she's going, and not bring it back in time for us to go to work. My dad yells at me for asking for the money in weekly increments but never has it all at the end or beginning of the month. They refuse to put money in the grocery pile but always eat the groceries. They will take things from my room without asking. They never put gas in my car after using it. They argue constantly. I was taking classes at a local community college but had to stop because I had to work more hours to cover for all the things that they do and don't pay for. This is just a small list of all the things they do that affect me. My siblings and I want to stay in this house because the rent is so affordable, and its location is extremely convenient for its distance from shopping, recreation, and my job. I can work 25 hours a week and go to school while living comfortably. How do I get them to move out? Or do I just accept that my siblings and I will have to move and leave them homeless? Story, entitled Grandma Hits Me with a Baby Stroller During a Graduation Ceremony. Once upon a time, I was a 20-year-old autistic person. I'm quite sensitive to loud sounds and crowds, which is exactly what a graduation ceremony is like. However, I was there for my sister, and I don't hold a grudge. Still, I wish I had brought headphones or something. Guests at the ceremony were seated on plastic bleachers in a large gymnasium with little legroom or space to move around, especially when the benches were tight. I'm also very, very picky about personal space, possibly because of the aforementioned autism. Before Ella sat down next to me, I started having difficulty with my surroundings, so I kept quiet and tried to concentrate on playing games on my phone. I was there with my parents and grandmother, and I sat with an empty chair next to me. Ella walked past some seats to the seat next to me and called her family to tell them where she was. I was worried that more people would come, but I didn't get any extreme feelings from her. Her family showed up 5 to 10 minutes later, a group of about 6 people, including a really upset newborn. Personally, I don't like children in general, but screaming children increase my anxiety and overstimulation to a whole new level. Fortunately for me and everyone around me, the baby quieted down pretty quickly and didn't cry for the rest of the ceremony. Really a polite kid. When she appeared, Ella had opened up an entire baby stroller and rolled it right next to her in the floor area of the bleachers. The handle of the stroller came a few inches from my face, and it was clear that I noticed it, but I didn't confront her about it. I don't like making a scene, even if the outcome might be positive. She put her baby in the stroller and started rolling it back and forth in the space between her and me. That means the stroller's handle was literally inches from my face every few seconds. I still said nothing and just focused on my phone. It went on like this for a while as I tried to block it out. I texted my friends to complain and sent selfies of myself with the stroller handle right in front of my face. I started to calm down as she passed the baby to other family members, but when the baby came back to her, she missed putting the baby in the stroller and it rolled out and hit my whole body and face. Ella apologized, but I quietly moved the stroller as far away as possible towards her and did the "it's okay" hand gesture, trying not to leave the whole ceremony in general. Even so, she continued to rock the baby in the stroller and it even came closer to me. She put the stroller in my face, and I moved the stroller further away when the baby was elsewhere and she was distracted. As soon as the ceremony ended, my grandmother on the other side noticed I was going quiet and basically trying to get myself as far away from the stroller as possible. She confronted Ella and kept telling her, "You're getting too close," while pushing the stroller back to her. Ella did not take this advice and kept shaking her head no and arguing with my grandmother. I tried to block it all out as I was between the two of them, covering my ears and looking down, so I don't remember much verbatim. Finally, they stopped, and we left immediately because I was close to a meltdown. Ella and her family walked past us as we left, and she didn't say anything. Honestly, I would be happy to never see her again. I felt guilty for not asking her to stop myself and then having my grandmother argue with her, but I was not in the right headspace or had the mental capacity to engage in any conversation. Ngufap Dam Bao by Viet Tieng An Qua Ban Kong Koloi. Don van ben qua ben hoek bet dau nat ben dui de kim tra loin the fap, chintava dau ka. Sua loi, 0, Don Lua Chan 0/2000 GPT 3.5 Turbo Teep, TUC Kai Tien. Story, Advice on Dealing with Mother After 40 Years. I feel like a 40-plus something adult that I should know how to handle this, but this has been ongoing for so long. Every time I feel like I know what to do, I change my mind again. Let me start by saying I was raised in a home where parents fought from morning to night, often putting us in the middle of their fights. It was mentally abusive. One small example, Mom would pretend to have heart attack and fall to floor when I was in grade school because of how my dad treated her, and when we would go to call 911 she would be fine. There are too many stories to tell. Her running away from my dad, and going away for the night, and me and my brother would be bawling our eyes out worried about divorce and her leaving us. I remember vividly going out with my friends to take my mind off of it and being told that she couldn't believe I could do that. I must have not cared or loved her. This continued on until college, when I would obsess over her health and making sure she was okay, religiously calling from college to make sure. I was diagnosed with OCD and severe anxiety as a young teen, had multiple episodes over the years that completely debilitated me. Somehow I am a functioning adult, own a business, went to law school and have children. When I graduated law school, I found out my mom had been cheating online on my father. I told her I would tell Dad if she didn't. She ended up leaving my dad and leaving the state to go live with this guy, married now for about 15 years. My dad, my brother, and I had no idea she was leaving. She said she was going on vacation and never came back. I was pregnant with my first at the time. I had kids at a young age because she was older and I wanted her to be around for them. I was left to clean out the house they owned. My child at home for my dad to sell and pretty much get my dad through this, and my brother, who was 22 at the time and living at home. Wait, we are just getting started. At 34, I found out that my mother was not my biological mother and that I was carried by a surrogate. Ends up she couldn't have any more children and my dad and her really wanted children. That's fine, but I did not know this until 6 years ago. I forgave again. When she was younger and around, back and forth to different states, she would play a role in mine and her grandkids' lives. She helped me through so many depressive episodes with round-the-clock care. She loved me, I know this, and we had an amazing relationship where we would talk daily for 15+ years, despite all the trauma. But now it's almost like all she cares about is herself. She will not come to see me or kids, 45 minutes away, demands we see her if we want to see her. Let's not forget I have 4 kids, all very busy. She is constantly making up stories, saying she's sick when we have plans that don't involve her house. Every time we talk or kids talk on phone, she says, "When you visiting, I want to see the kids." I know she cares, I'm just so angry and hurt. I get it, she's old, over 80, and her memory is going. I'm trying to be mindful of this, and I feel horrible when I get angry, but I think it's just accumulating of tons of trauma and anger. So, ends to say, I'm hurt, I'm frustrated, and don't know how to handle her moving forward. I want to be a different type of parent and I'm just fed up. Oh, and my dad, he's amazing. I thought he was the problem my whole childhood. I'm sure he played a part, but now I know the real problem. Ngufap Dam Bao by Viet Tieng An Qua Ban Kong Koloi. Don Van Ben Qua Ben Hoke But Dao Nat Ben Dui De Kim Tra Loing the Fap, Chin Tava Dao Ka. Sua Loi, 0, Don Lua Chan 0/2000 GPT 3.5 Turbo Teep, TUC Kai Tien. Story: Father finally wants to have a relationship, 25 years later. Mike, 25 female, father, 50 male, finally wants to have a relationship with me, and I am so uninterested. My father, who was absent for most of my life, is now wanting to have a relationship with me. He says he was absent because of depression and because I remind him of his failures. I don't know how to deal with the situation. My mom abruptly left my dad when I was a toddler because he was verbally, financially, and slowly becoming physically abusive. One day after he went to work, she packed us up and left him. Growing up, she never spoke badly about him and always encouraged us to talk and see each other. My first memory of my father is from when I was 5. He picked me up and we drove to his friend's house to go fishing. I only spoke Spanish at the time, and all his friends were very American. After a couple of hours, he told me to stay with them because he was going to run errands and be back in an hour. While he was gone, I was really scared and confused because I didn't know him, didn't know the people he left me with, and couldn't communicate with them. I tried asking the lady to let me call my mom, but she didn't understand me. When he finally picked me up, it was super late and all I had eaten was some corn pops with no milk. We went to his apartment and all he had was a mattress on the floor with a big window in front of it, no shades. I didn't sleep at all. I was hungry. That was the first time I ever saw a sunrise. After that, I was always scared of being alone with him. I would always bring a friend or cousin. I'd only see him maybe once a year on my birthday, and honestly don't remember much if anything about those times. He was mostly absent from my life. When I was 11 we moved to the same city as my aunt, father's sister, who my mom is very close to. I started learning about all the crazy issues my dad's side of the family had. My father came and visited me and his sister, and even thought of moving there too. But first, he tried talking to my mom and I guess gauging to see if she was still interested in him. She wasn't. I didn't know this ATM, this was when things became bad. My dad started causing problems with my aunt and his mother for being in contact with my mom. He started hating my mom a lot and it affected our relationship even more. He told my grandmother that she was not allowed to be around us. One day I went to the mall with my mom, grandmother, aunt and my cousins and we had a great time. At the end, my grandma gave me $1,000 cash and a letter. The letter said she could no longer be my grandma and she couldn't be in my life. I was 12. My heart was broken because I loved her. My aunt took my mom's side and stopped talking to my dad and grandma. He was absent after that. When I was 15, I was going through a rebellious phase with my mom. I grew up a lonely, only child latchkey kid. And I was extremely confused about all the issues with my dad. I wanted to learn for myself why my dad hated my mom. At this time I didn't know my dad had been abusive. I begged him to let me visit him and meet my little brothers, although I was scared. He took me on vacation to Canada with his wife, kids, and my grandmother. It was awkward but mostly okay, until he decided to speak ill of my entire mom's side of the family. He blamed my mom for his problems and called her a bitch, he just said horrible things. I realized he was a monster. When I got back I begged my mom to tell me the truth. I learned about the abuse she endured, his childhood and the abuse my aunt and grandma had endured, all the drama I didn't understand from over the years, everything. Basically, my grandfather was extremely abusive, and my dad's family was consistently getting into fights and had a love/hate relationship with one another. I was shocked to say the least. Still, I tried to be understanding and to have a relationship with my dad. But he was never interested. He'd tell me he would call and never did. He forgot my birthdays. Never congratulated me on anything. Was just totally absent. I tried visiting him again, but he left me all day at his business alone. He just didn't seem to care about me. Now, years later, he calls me out of the blue. He tells me, without apologizing, that the reason he's been absent from my life is because he has depression. That he finally has his medication in order and to please understand that he couldn't even bear to look at me my whole life. That I remind him of my mom and the day she left him. That I remind him of his failures. He calls and texts me often now. But still to this day he doesn't ask about me. He doesn't know anything about me, at all. Nothing. He talks about himself, his business, his vacations, his kids. I answer because I feel bad for him. But it hurts so much and it's hard for me to even think of him. It hurts that when he sees me, he sees his failures. He doesn't see me. I don't think he ever will and how to get over that. Ngufap dam bao by Viet Tieng an qua ban kong koloi. Don van ben qua ben hoc bat dao nat ben dui de kim traloing the fap, chintava dao ka. Sua loi, 0, Don Lua Chan 0/2000 GPT 3.5 Turbo Teep, TUC Kai Tien. Story, Should I Stand Up Against My Narcissistic Dad? It was only this year that I realized that my father was actually extremely narcissistic and also emotionally insensitive. I always thought that him shouting at me, threatening to hurt me, and actually hurting me was what he described as disciplining me. But over the course of the past year, I've begun to see what a monster he really is. To give you an idea of how narcissistic he is, exactly an hour ago he was in the backyard and then started banging on the back door because it was locked and he needed to get inside. My house has 2 back doors, I'm pretty sure the other door is still unlocked. When he knocked on the door, I was just lying on the bed and my sister was taking a shower. I was very worried when I heard the door banging, and because I was lying in bed it took me a while to get dressed and then go to the door. When I got to the door and finally opened it, He told me to take my sister and I out immediately and pull out the weeds growing in the flower bed. He was also serious about this. He actually forced my sister out of the bathroom to do this. I have a good feeling that he was probably fully aware that the other door was probably unlocked. He just wanted to act like he had a reason to be angry with me and my sister, which I don't think the door was locked. Locked door is the possible reason why he was angry with us. I think this whole thing was done just so he could make us feel guilty for no reason at all. And I don't even understand why he did that. Is it because my sister and I don't go out to help him garden, if that's really what he does, even though he never announces that he's doing it and that he needs help? Or was it simply because he wanted to make my sister and I feel guilty for not meeting his needs right away? I will never know, and I don't want to know, because I'm tired of always trying to find my mistakes. In terms of emotional indifference, he doesn't notice or care about my feelings. I remember having a conversation about me feeling seriously depressed, and he just turned it into a conversation about himself. And I had this conversation with him more than once, and each time, the result was the same. One time he offered to take me to see a therapist, but it didn't seem sincere, so I didn't accept. Even though I feel like I should. In the not paying attention category, he could clearly see that I was angry, exhausted, or seriously depressed, but he still treated it the way he always did. An example of this is that he always forced me to participate in a wrestling sport called jiu-jitsu that I didn't want to participate in. Now I don't know which subject it was, but he either didn't care or didn't notice because I could be so visibly exhausted that I looked like a zombie and still be forced to go. I told him countless times that I didn't like jiu-jitsu and wanted to practice another sport, but every time he just responded with, "It's not up to you." I understand that these are just clouds on the iceberg of abuse, but it really hurts to be alive and know that my own father doesn't care about me and is only using me so his house can be clean. Will. And this doesn't even just apply to my father. Almost my entire family is like that except my aunt and cousin. I noticed that as my sister grew up, she began to behave more and more like my father, becoming obsessed with cleanliness and perfection. I tried many times to explain to her that our father didn't really care about us and was only using us so his house could be clean and tidy. She refused to accept it every time and just called me crazy or tried to escape. I could go on and on about all the terrible things my father did to me, but that would make this post 30 times longer. If my father can't love me, I think no one can. I have a good feeling that I will die alone, and that thought scares me because I know it could be true. Oh yeah, did I mention I'm 14 years old? Bye and see you again in the next videos and stories.